Hey everyone, and welcome to our DAT In Focus interview. The topic for this interview is going to be all things business intelligence and analytics. And to help discuss that topic, I'm joined by David Spencer, who is Director of Business Intelligence at Arrive Logistics. Welcome, David.
Hey, Ken. Nice to be here. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I really appreciate you spending the time. So I'm Ken Adamo, Chief of Analytics at DAT, and in my role, I'm responsible for data science, data analytics, and industry analysis. You care to give the viewers a quick overview of your role, David?
Well, I'm Director of Business Intelligence at Arrive Logistics, and in my role, it's everything from reporting and analytics and supporting our data science efforts to understanding what's going on in the industry in terms of market conditions and helping communicate that with our customers and carriers through our platform, Arrive Insights.
Awesome. Yeah. So I'm going to jump right in. And I have a little bit of a personal connection with Arrive. I know your CEO, Matt Pyatt. He's a fellow Mid-American Conference grad, right? Miami of Ohio, if I'm not mistaken,
Yep.
From the Northeast Ohio area. I think I met you, David, a few years ago at a DAT event, oddly, at Torrey Pines. It's hard to believe that we were actually doing those things back in those days, right?
I know. Knocking down birdies at Torrey was fun.
Yeah, beautiful weather too. So for those less familiar with Arrive, do you care to give a quick overview? It's a tremendous story, rapid growth, but I'll let you explain it better than I ever could.
Sure. Yeah. Well, founded in 2014, we have come a long way over the past 6.5 years. In 2020, we crested over 815 million in revenues. And ended the year with about 900 employees. We're headquartered in Austin, Texas. We have offices in Chicago and Chattanooga as well, and primarily focused on full truckload for van and dry van and reefer. Those are our core strengths, full domestic across the entire domestic United States. I'm myself located in the Chicago office, but it's been great getting a chance to go down and visit Austin, especially in these winter months. Lately, it's been a little cold up here.
Kind of jealous. So one question we get a lot, especially since a lot of our content has an analytics focus, is what's encompassed in roles and responsibilities? And I understand that your role is more of a senior role, but can you take a few minutes to just talk about in your role, kind of what an average day or your roles and responsibilities, but also some key members on your team, what their roles and responsibilities might look like?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think it depends on the function, right? But myself, one of the things I'm doing every morning right away is looking at the updated data. I think one of the best things about recent advancements in the industry is all the new, more high frequency data that's available day to day and helping inform us at brokerages or shippers or carriers, wherever it may be, on what the conditions are. So that's a huge focus for me, staying on top of those conditions, communicating that with our team, our sales team, our carrier team. Where are the areas that they might struggle today that they weren't yesterday? Those are all really important things to be paying attention to on a day-to-day basis, and communicating throughout the business has been really important for us. From an analytics perspective and reporting perspective, really it comes down to making sure that our dashboards are up to date and refreshing. We're addressing ad hoc reporting requests. When it comes to our data science efforts, we're thinking about what are the areas of the business that have some inefficiencies right now. How do we want to think about applying some analytics to help inform those making decisions of the information they need to make the best decision? Really, it's just depends on what the core function is that we're talking about, and day-to-day activities here.
Yeah, I feel like, and I'm curious to see if your perspective aligns with this, the more data you acquire, right, whether it's through purchasing or kind of scraping it off of government sites, the more important distilling it down into actionable insights become, right? Because you can get way overloaded with the bits and bytes. And I think that really brings the role of business intelligence to the forefront, right?
Yeah, you have to know what's a short-term data point and what's a long-term, what has long-term implications in terms of forecasting, right? I think you mentioned some of these government statistics, right, or consumer spending patterns. These are things that may play out over longer periods of time. Say new truck orders was just released for January, right? Preliminary data, right? Well, that's not going to have a huge impact for 6 to 9 months down the road. You have to have an understanding of the timeline of the impact of some of these data points as well. I think that's an important piece to it. But to your point, what are the actionable insights that matter? That's where we're focusing, right? What are the things that have the biggest impact on our business? Where can we have, where are we seeing the greatest areas of inefficiencies in our customers and our carriers' businesses? And we have to prioritize those efforts first, right? Because those are the biggest areas of opportunity for us.
Yeah, and that's really, I think that you've outlined a really great success plan for really concrete business intelligence, not spending time on stuff that doesn't matter. And for a novice organization, that can take a while to learn, right? Everything seems to be important when you have all of this data at your disposal. And I think the more that you do it right, the more you can suss out signal versus noise and what's important.
Yeah, our business plan is the core to how we think about data, right? First and foremost, when we think about our staff and our headcount, it's all planned specifically based on the goals that we've seen our new hires hit over based on their tenure at 6 months, at 1 year, at 18 months, at 2 years. Where are they most likely going to be? We understand our rates of attrition. Unfortunately, attrition is a part of every business, but making sure we're hitting those goals and staying on track, that's how we keep a balance between, our supply side and our demand side within our own business, right? How much freight are we putting on the board? And we have that right capacity to support it. So really for us, it's at the core of our data, we're really focused on keeping our business on track and making sure we're hitting our goals. And data really is at the core of making sure we're functioning properly and optimizing our performance. Then you start peeling back the layers and thinking about, okay, we're hitting our goals or we're not. Where are there areas to improve? Where are we spending more than we should be in terms of over-market purchasing? Where are areas of opportunity where we have strength, where we purchase under market? How do we utilize those to support our customers and carriers? It all flows downhill from our business being so reliant on data just to function and optimize our performance.
I think that's a great segue into my next question, and I know it's been beaten to death. And coming on the heels of what you described as a really great year, over $800 million, I'm sure you and the entire executive team have that, the $1 billion number in sight. How did you, through the lens of how you view the business, manage the volatility of 2020?
Yeah, well, I just want to give a shout out to our IT and our technology teams at Arrive. I think the pandemic caught a lot of businesses off guard. It kind of forced our hand to launch our proprietary TMS, brand new internally. It kind of forced us, right? But we were very successful with that launch immediately, which allowed us to send at the time, more than 800 employees to work from home in a matter of days. I think first off, right off the bat, having sort of a continuity of business there was important for us, important for our customers. From that point forward, it really was about understanding what are the trends affecting supply and demand in the industry. I think this year we saw consumer demand and the changing consumer basket really play a big impact into what we saw in terms of how that translated to truckload demand, right? So what are these data points that matter, and following them closely and being able to react quickly? I think in a time of uncertainty like the pandemic, we really had to be agile and move quickly and be forecasting and adjusting our forecast constantly.
What are you seeing so far this year that is surprising, that is playing out how you expected, sort of early assessments on 21?
Obviously, it's too early to tell what the year is going to look like, but we did expect to see things kind of cool down in terms of the ratio of supply to demand here as we moved into Q1. There was a lot going on in Q4 with retail peak season, and we expected as we transition into Q1 here in 2021 that we would see more of a normal seasonal pattern or a softening. And I believe we did start to see that through at least the first 3 weeks of January. I think the last week of January saw some challenges in terms of the end of the month, but also the snowstorms that really affected large portions of the country. That kind of shook things up a little bit, and we've seen the extreme cold follow that, and how that's affected reefer capacity and just capacity in general. That's something that we're still trying to understand how that's going to play out over the course of the quarter, but that's been a little bit surprising. You can never count out some bad weather to be disruptive in Q1, and I think that's been the wild card thus far.
Yeah, I mean, polar vortex was 2014, I believe, right, which kicked off, it was late 2013, early 2014 that kicked off that boom. So weather is always the wild card for sure. All right, David, so now that we've covered 2020 and the first month and a half of 21, I wanted to circle back and ask you, what's one thing or a few key things you learned over the last year that you really hope to employ at Arrive moving forward?
Yeah, great question. I think one of the key things that I've personally learned over the last year has been how sensitive truckload demand is to changes in consumer spending patterns, in the changing consumer basket. In this past year, we saw a dramatic shift away from services and entertainment and travel to goods, durable goods, furniture, everything that people need for enjoying life at home, right? And I think that had a tremendous impact that stressed capacity with that huge surge in demand for durable goods. And I think that just having a good sense of awareness as to what the current consumer spending patterns are and how they're going to be applied going forward, that's definitely something that's going to change potentially even the normal flows of seasonality that we're used to seeing in the past, right? If you look at what happened in the retail peak season this past year, Amazon doing their Prime Day in October pretty much just stretched out that whole holiday shopping season. And I think artificially bought shippers a lot of extra time to get the goods into position for fulfillment for Christmas. That's a pattern that we might expect to see going forward, changing the way that we've seen Q4 seasonality be in prior years on a go-forward basis. These are all things that we're paying attention to as to how things might change going forward. Really interested to see what you guys have been seeing. What are you thinking about?
I think to echo your point, I'll have two things. One's industry related, and it's just remarkable how integrated the shipping industry, specifically the North American truckload industry, is with all of these other parts of the economy, right? So you look around the room, and Dean Croak on our team makes an excellent point. How many more desk chairs and desks and bookshelves can you buy, right? So there becomes we think about all of these things that, at least when I was in industry, weren't ultra front of mind. It was pretty much all industry data that we studied and some of the big macros when looking at future trends. The other part is it's been a great year and something I couldn't really do much when I was in industry, but just connecting with other folks in the industry. I found that with freight, more so than other industries, you could be the fiercest competitor day in and day out. But still, hop on a webinar with each other for the sake of educating your carrier base or talking about major concerns facing shippers, and just getting out and connecting via social media, via virtual conferences, and finding ways to still connect. That's something I don't want to lose once things kind of go back to, air quote, normal. And I think it's been really great. I mean, this is a perfect example of things we may not have done 2 or 3 years ago, right? But all in the sake of increasing awareness and education and just being kind of gregarious about data and analytics, I think has been awesome throughout the year.
Cool.
So I want to pivot us into the next question. And like I said, I've been lucky enough to know you and some of the senior folks over at Arrive for a while. And seeing you guys grow, one thing that was always remarkable was that how much you put data and analytics kind of as a priority at the forefront and scaling it as you grow. And I really want to hear from you what it's like kind of living that every day and how Arrive prioritizes that and ensures it scales with the business.
If you know Matt, he's always kicking the ball down the field a little bit further for us, right? So we set our goals, we go out, we achieve them, and it's on to the next goal. And I think we've applied that mentality to what we do with data and analytics. As I described earlier, our core business model depends on the success of accomplishing and hitting certain goals, all the way down to the per rep per month, of tenure perspective. And so once we start to have those type of core, we call them table stakes, data tools in place, then we start thinking about, how do we start, squeezing more juice out of this, right? The way that I think about applying data science to what we do as a brokerage, being a high transaction business, running, almost 2,500 loads a day at this point, every single load is an opportunity where small improvements can lead to big returns over the course of a year, right? $1 or $2 or $5 incremental returns really add up. And so we start thinking about really where those opportunities exist and how we use data to help us accomplish some of that, right? One of the mindsets we have is, I know it's probably one of your later questions here, but about how we deal with those that are experienced and have for the longest time relied on gut instinct. Well, in reality, the goal of us with data science and analytics is not necessarily to perform better than those that have been around the industry for 20 plus years, right? With Arrive looking to hire 1,000 new bodies in 2021, how do we artificially inflate their intelligence using data analytics to get more out of people earlier and increase their experience levels? The right data in front of these reps at the right point in time for decision making, that's huge, right? And so as we grow, our challenges and change and our objectives change, and so do our priorities for analytics.
You have an interesting viewpoint, right? When you're in a rapid growth business, you don't have to think back decades to think when you were the size of a small broker, right? No less than a few years ago, you were considerably smaller, right? That's kind of the double-edged thing of rapid growth. What's one bit of advice you would give the Arrive of 5 years ago as they embarked upon this journey of both revenue growth for sure, but also data and analytics maturity?
To speak on what has been really beneficial for us over this growth is thinking about scale, right? If we're currently a company of 900 to 1,000, and in a year we're going to be a company of 2,000, well, we need to be thinking about solutions that scale as our headcount grows. And we've gone through process improvement and changes in our workflows, new technology. Our data sources have changed. Flexibility in our analytics platform is key, right? So we talk about building logic upstream and focusing on data quality. And, you can't go back and replace bad data, as it's being created. So focusing really on clean, well-structured data early is going to enable, as you bring analysts in over the course of time, to go back and have a history of data to work with, right? And that's something where we've been successful and, is in scale and in building a good history of data to support analytics, right? Those are the fundamentals that I believe have really made us successful.
I feel like it's a constant struggle in transportation because it's such a blending of the new and the old, especially in the LTL space. In my history, I've found that you find a lot of conversations start with, well, in my X years of history, and usually whatever is going to be said after that, I'm usually bracing for impact. Because I found that some of the most savvy and sophisticated operators that have that experience don't tout it, right? So the question I have for you really gets around, you've established that Arrive is using data and analytics as a competitive advantage, but how do you internally deal with the sort of human push and pull against gut instinct and experiential learning?
Yeah. Well, like I said previously, it's not necessarily about trying to have your analytics or your forecasts be better than those that have tons of experience and really that know-how. But for us, the focus has been, like I said, on how do we raise the water level for everyone within our organization, right? And I think that's been the focus. But a big part of that is also building trust within the organization. Those that have that experience, they're more reluctant to rely on technology or data or the output of a machine learning algorithm because they have that experience. Oftentimes they find mistakes or errors or things that a human being maybe would not have predicted or forecasted. And one of the ways we combat that is through visibility and transparency, right? We have a cost prediction model, and one of the things that we do is we provide visibility into how it's performing by lane, by region, by customer, it predicting our actual costs on loads so that people have a really good understanding. They can always go back in and validate, okay, where is it strong? Where has it had, not necessarily the greatest strength in its performance? And visibility and transparency is key. We want people to understand what's going on with the data, not just dealing with some form of black box where anything could be happening within it. I think that builds trust. That kind of gets us over that. But having a good culture of data at Arrive has been really helpful, and thankfully we haven't dealt with too much opposition to what we've been trying to do with our analytics.
The first part of what you said mirrors my experience exactly, right? Your average broker coming right out of college hasn't had much experience, if at all, on the trucking or transportation sector, 6 months on stipend and then on full commission. How do I get them a baseline package of institutional knowledge through data and analysis and BI. And then also, I think your other kind of low-hanging fruit is how do I very, very small incremental improvements in how your top performers manage their books can have some of the biggest impact to your business, right? Because they're already performing at a high level and they're already moving a lot of freight. So if you can sharpen the pencil with them by giving them tools, right, it's the sky's really the limit on how you can run more throughput through that machine. So I'm going to pivot to the future as we start to wrap things up here. And I usually ask this question to all of our guests, but what are some big advancements you see coming in freight, specific to analytics, if you don't mind, over the next 1 to 3 years?
I think that there's a lot of low-hanging fruit in the industry, right? Largely been untouched. As we start to think about what are the areas of inefficiency, whether it be trying to understand dwell time at warehousing, whether it be on the brokerage side, like I said earlier, overspending or against market rates. I think that in general, the areas of opportunity just come from a continued advancement of analytics, and I think leveling of the playing field. I think more and more brokerages and more carriers and shippers are going to start building out analytics-focused teams, and I think having a level playing field is really what's in the future.
Yeah, I agree with you. Transparency in data, access to data removes friction from markets. Right? Could you imagine trading stocks without a stock ticker, like they used to do? When only people lucky enough to have a physical ticker tape machine could see the most recent trade prices. And for the first 30 or so years of deregulation, that's kind of how our industry operated, right? So I think you're going to see this tremendous catch-up period. I truly believe we're on the foothills of that right now, where our industry is going to catch up. I think airlines were deregulated in 78, trucking in 80. And I don't think anyone can make the case that the airlines aren't significantly more ahead of trucking in terms of technological innovation. So I'm super excited to be part of it, because I think the next 1 to 3 or even 5 to 10 years is just going to be remarkable in our space.
Yeah, the access to data and information externally has grown tremendously over the past, even like past year, but I would say in the past 2 to 3 years, it's been tremendous advancements in what's accessible to us. As we're looking to invest in analytics, there's a lot more potential return there for us because of some of the providers in the industry, very much like yourselves, making the data available to us, not only more data, but more frequently, more regularly, easier to connect to, all really, really big gains for the industry.
For sure. So I'm going to bring us home here with a bit of the tip of the cap to the content marketing and your team, David, as well, over at Arrive. I truly think, not just because you're on the virtual line with me here today, you guys are putting out some of the best monthly content out there as it pertains to market updates. I think there's some I'm not going to name anyone else, but I think there's some other, as a whole, I think our industry is doing a really, really great job of democratizing these data and insights in a way that's easily accessible by everyone. But I wanted to give you a couple minutes to maybe talk about that, but then also point people to where they can find it. Because again, I would highly recommend that anyone watches this goes and checks it out, because I think you'll learn quite a bit.
Thanks. Yeah, really appreciate the nod there. We put a lot of effort into making sure this is something that those that we work with will find valuable, and we put it out there for free. And we put it out there for the entire industry. I think there's been a huge shift to that this year, as you alluded to. That's been part of the benefit of us working from home and going through this situation is the communal nature of sharing of information and insights, right? But the core of that is, we've been using this data and this information to drive our strategy for years, right? And if now we're taking this and putting that in front of the shippers that we work with, primarily shippers that we work with, but exposing it to everyone and saying, hey, here's what we think is happening. Here's how we're making our decisions around contract pricing. And here's all the data to support that, right? That's full transparency. We're making that available to our shippers so that they can plan, they can forecast. Ultimately, we want them to be more successful. The more successful they are, the more freight. When they're more successful, we're more successful because we're on the same page. And so that's really the root of why we're doing this and why we put this content out there. But for those that are interested, you can always check out Arrive's LinkedIn page. We post that there right away every single month. You can reach out, can get you added to a distro list, or you can find it at arrivelogistics.com/Arrive Insights. And the latest update should be available for you right when you go there. So thank you so much for the plug, Ken. We get a lot of DAT data included in there. So appreciate the call out.
Yeah, a couple of things I'll just wrap up with as it pertains to that is, one, I love when we disagree, or anyone in the industry. I love when I see disagreeing reports, right? Because most of the folks from the blue chip brokerages and data companies are out there. The data is good, but I mean, what we do is we're here to interpret it, right? If all of it was just the data, I don't think either of us would be employed, right? It's a big part of what we do is interpreting it and gleaning the insights. So 2020 and so far in 21 has been a great year for healthy debates about what the metrics mean and where we're heading. We've tilled a lot of new ground, which has been ripe for that debate. But what I also appreciate about your report and what I've been striving to do here as well is it's pretty much agenda free, I think, for the most part. It's sure you'd love people to ship with Arrive. We'd love people to become part of our customer portfolio. But I think in those formats, it's very important to be as objective and agenda free as possible, because I think that's what resonates the most with the folks reading it and trying to derive value from it. Does that kind of jive with how you approach it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for those that read through it, we're not touting Arrive. We're putting the data out there and saying, this is how it is, this is our interpretation, and this is how we're making decisions based on this data. I think we've seen that response from the shippers that we work with. To be honest, our engagement with shippers has improved dramatically. If we're willing to put this content and this information out there and take this stance and drive these conversations, it really puts us on that level of those top tier brokerages, doing these types of things, because this information is table stakes. Being able to talk through this, being able to have these types of strategic conversations, it's been incredibly important for us.
And it makes you vulnerable. I remember the first time I did it with my new job, I was like, is it okay to post this? I mean, I'm having this debate internally, right? It makes you vulnerable because it puts your thinking out there into the public domain to be challenged. But then I think you come to a point where you eventually realize that the best thing that can happen is that it gets challenged and debated, and it helps you arrive at a more well-defended thesis of what's going on in the market. Whether you're using that to the end to run a brokerage or to create data products, I think that's ultimately the pressure test that you're looking for to really make sure that you're going down the right path. With that, I think I've taken enough of your time today. I do greatly appreciate Arrive for lending you to us for the past couple hours to get this set up and shot. Again, I encourage you to check out the monthly update they put together. And again, greatly appreciate it, and I hope we can talk soon.
Thanks so much, Ken. Been a pleasure. Always love chatting with you.
Thanks for tuning in to our DAT In Focus podcast with David Spencer from Arrive Logistics. If you enjoyed this podcast, I recommend you check out any of our other content, such as the DAT Freightvine podcast with Chris Kaplis or our weekly DAT IQ market update. Thanks again for listening, and we hope to see you again soon.